Hello everyone, it's Famba20 here, and I'm back with another Mix and Mega video, and it's been a while. So I have two special guests with me, one who's been on my channel before and a new one. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I've already been here before. I'm known as Chazm on the Smoke forums. I've been in a video prior to this, I'm sure.
Yeah, back in May, I think, or something like that. Anyways.
Yeah, and I'm Andy. I guess I'm new here, and I am the most recent addition to the M&M Council team, and not much else to say besides that, I guess.
Exactly. All right, so there's been quite a few things since our last video that's kind of changed in the metagame. One of the most notable things actually was that the Lando's Tea got suspected, and subsequently it got banned. It was quite a polarizing suspect, to say the least, apart from the whole explosion thing. So if we want to get into it a bit, we can, but for the most part, apart from the explosion, the discussion about explosion being broken or Lando's Tea, I think for the most part we can all agree that Lando's Tea was like a threat at least worthy of being suspected, no?
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. I did go heavily for no ban in the suspect testing because I didn't think that its traits were strongly suspectable, as a lot of people said. But yeah, it had one extremely consistent set, and that was sort of what caused it to get a lot of people to be very annoyed with it, because it was just so good at compressing it.
Yeah, there were two mons that I was looking to suspect, or I guess was okay with suspecting. If you know me, you know that I'm not a super suspect friendly kind of person. Like, I feel like the M&M metagame, I didn't feel like it needed I didn't feel like it needed a suspect, but I guess it was more, there are so many threats, it feels like everybody had their own opinion about what needed to be banned. I heard Zyger, I heard Pedon, even I heard one person talking about Lunala and
Wow.
how annoying that was. We had Lando, of course, we had Explosion, we had Magearna, we had Kartana, and there was just so many different opinions.
I would add Terrakion onto there too. Terrakion was a
yeah, you're right. I forgot about Terrakion.
That was a pretty big one, yeah.
How did we forget about Terrakion?
Come on. Can't forget Terrakion.
Yeah.
But so, yeah. I felt like it was like, there wasn't it wasn't a case like with Marshadow or even Salazzle, where it was like, not Salazzle,
Naganadel. Yeah.
Been trying to use Red Orb Salazzle recently to replace Red Orb Naganadel, so that was like the mon that came to mind.
Yeah,
but no, Naganadel, where those two are super clearly over the top and needed to go, and the majority opinion of the bans versus no bans reflected that, but there was nothing that really came to mind, and so I felt like it wasn't really fair to have a suspect. But the two ones that I was like all right with going along with, if there was a super majority opinion with like the rest of the council and such, was Lando's Tea and Kartana. And after the rest of the council gave their opinions on what they felt like one of the suspects, we chose to move forward with Lando's Tea. So yes, I do agree. It was definitely worth suspect testing it, and it did get banned. So I guess the majority of the community felt like it needed to go. So I don't know.
Yeah, to add on to that, actually, I think for the most part why people kind of got like this sense of like ban happiness, or like there's sort of like there was multiple targets for like things being suspected. I think it's because the metagame kind of shifted from bulky offense to offense, more or less. We saw the rise in webs teams, especially in the past OMPL. And the abundance of threats, like you mentioned, Kartana, Terrakion, Zygarde's always been a threat, but even Darkrai in a bit, but now it's kind of fallen off. Just stuff that kind of promoted offense, and it was really, it's extremely hard to build for balance, especially in a metagame where Lando's Tea was roaming around. So I think a lot of people kind of were discouraged because of that, and were kind of like, not scapegoating, but kind of just like placing a target on the aforementioned like potential suspects, and I think that's what kind of caused this overreaction in a sense, I guess you could say.
I would like to note that during the web's reign, during the end of sort of Landorus area, about about a month before it got suspected, there were a few good offense killers that were they were heavily advertised around that time. One of them in particular being Zeraora. Or sort of particularly guys niche being a particularly good webs killer, and the fact that it's one of the few speed control options that we have that actually has bulk and is capable of switching into a few decent targets. That rose very nicely, and I think it's going to continue to stay where it is for the future.
Right, and just the fact that Fake Out can out prioritize extreme speed is also just like a little nice bonus addition I like with Zeraora. And like you said, it's once it Mega Evolves, it doesn't get affected by webs, and I think for the most part, like there has been counterplay that started to go up, but like I still, even to this day, like a lot of people assume, or at least I assume, that offense would kind of go down after Lander's T got banned, and I would say that it's not as potent with the threat of explosion and just Lander's T being so hard to deal with, but I still think offense is quite good and might be still the best playstyle with stuff like Kartana and Terrakion being so oppressive.
Only after a few days, I have already noticed that a lot more people have
with this Lando T being is, I don't think it's actually going to. I don't think people are going to see the change in the metagame that they really want from this. I don't think this is really going to dramatically impact things super hard like people are assuming it will, in a sense. I think offense is still going to be the primary archetype that people are going to go to, just because that's the nature of what Mixed Omega is right now, and there are still so many good threats that hurt, like Terrakion, like Kartana, like even Lunala. It's so difficult to find long-term check to Lunala.
Exactly. And we could talk about Lunala a little bit too, because that's been it's an interesting case, as we have an Uber Mon that in the regular Uber's metagame, it's not bad per se, but it's not as good as it is in this format, and this is mainly, I think, to the fact, like we discussed before, how like we said, offense is kind of the name of the game here. So typical Lunala checks that you would see in Ubers who are more fitted on balance, like well, I get Mega Sableye is a bad example, but like stuff like Darkseus and even Yveltal, which is way more common in Ubers. Typical Lunala checks like that are not quite viable in Mixed Mega, so that's why Lunala is just typically a mon that kind of preys on offense, so I think that's why it's mainly striving right now, per se.
Our issue with Lunala currently is, again, the fact that there aren't really that many viable resistances to ghost types in general.
Right.
As you said, with Ubers, you have Yveltal and even the likes of Arceus Normal, which are capable of sort of being semi-pivots. A few very good revenge killers, Lunala, that can do the job pretty well. But the issue is in Mixed Mega, thanks to the heavy abundance of pixelate stream speed, Magearna, and fighting type coverage from the likes of Kartana and Terrakion. A lot of dark types are just completely scared away, with arguably the most viable one being Buzz at the moment.
Yeah, I can agree.
Yeah.
We do have like kind of soft checks like Gyarados Sight, Toxapex, that's one that comes to mind, but even then it's like you have to bring it in safely. It has to Mega Evolve because it's not checking Lunala pre-Mega Evolution, so it's just really hard. And even Lunala is quite a versatile mon. You see stuff like just CM, 3 attacks. I've even seen Tailwind be used quite a bit, and I really like that set a lot. Even Substitute, of course, is still good, and even the defensive set is, for a typical like offensive mon, like its defensive sets are like quite good too, so that's kind of notable as well. So I don't know, it's an interesting case.
Yeah, I have said, and I'll say it again, I think Gyarados Sight Toxapex is the best Lunala counter. It's the single best mon that can come in and pretty much take on any set. Like, it doesn't matter if it's running Calm Mind, Modest, Moon Blast, or Focus Blast, or even Thunder. Toxapex doesn't care. It's always going to deal with Lunala really well. The problem is, I don't think Gyarados Toxapex is very good right now. It's super passive, and the role of Toxic Spikes is unique and great. The fact that it has this Wallbreaker Toxic Spikes, and I think it could carve out a niche and be used a little bit more because of the fact that Lunala is so oppressive. But as of now, like talking the past few months, it has been a very underwhelming and just hard to build with Pokemon. I brought it versus Chloe in OM World Cup, and it really did not do that much. It was just it sat around, and I think I sacked it super early on, and I don't know. I haven't had a lot of success with it. Not the success level that we had first, like the previous OMPL and like the summer and such, when the metagame was a lot more passive and balancy and oriented like that. It feeds off of fat. Like super passive mons like Arceus's or Blissey's, when people use that more.
Yeah.
It wants to come in on those and start terrorizing fat teams with moldy toxic spikes, and paired alongside with like Zygarde or a really good abuser that can punish the kind of bonds that can defog or come in and deal with toxic spikes. So the fact that those fat guys aren't run that often right now is just really doesn't make toxic spikes or toxic spikes itself very good. So that's another reason why Lunala is able to terrorize the metagame so much, or has been able to in the past, is because the best one to handle it isn't so bad or just very hard to build with or utilize.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest attribute to it, and go ahead.
I think I'd like to move on to two particular threats which pretty much tear up any sort of defensive dark type in the metagame. Being Terrakion into an extent, particularly for Gyarados like Toxapex, Kartana. Those two particularly being affected by the fact that their checks and are very scarce in the current metagame. And although I have to admit for Kartana, it's sort of getting a bit better with the rise of more bulky offense teams, particularly a greater increase in soft checks, for example, Ho and Noivern
That's true.
Terrakion is still an incredibly aggressive threat at the moment, and whilst I wouldn't consider it susceptible so far, definitely out to be one of the best moments that have changed from Lando dropout.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think even I wanted to mention, because the rise, I don't know when those sets were kind of starting to use exactly, but Pinsirite on both mons, I think that really skewed counterplay. Like especially when if you think of your typical Kartana check or Terrakion check, like excluding Aggronite Buzzwole, like it's just Buzzwole in general, like it's able to abuse with the flying stab, and it's very hard to kind of build around those two. I feel, like you said, especially since bulky offense is kind of seeing a resurgence, but even with offense, like Terrakion and Kartana still thrive. So I don't know, they're very oppressive, I say, but ban-worthy, who knows.
You're really making me happy talking about Pinsirite Terrakion. That's like my pet mon. It's the mon that I managed to coin that set in OMPL last year. I know it was used like a little bit previously, but I don't know. Earthquake in combination with flying coverage, like its main secondary option being Earthquake, wasn't popularized, and I had noticed that I actually had built with it for Chazm, but I messed up the fact, because I noticed that Chazm had been running a lot of guys like Magearna, or even just like types that lost to Pinsirite Magearna would beat all the other types, but lost to Pinsirite Magearna. He would run like a Diansite type that's a speed controller, which just get wiped up by quick attack, but then I changed it, and obviously that didn't work out. But yeah, I do think Pinsirite Terrakion adds a really difficult situation into checking Terrakion, because of the fact that Diansite is actually making a slight resurgence recently as well to deal with Kartana revenging Terrakion and such, and it can even deal with Zero Aura better, even though it takes a ton from Fake Out with the Diansite defense traps. You can actually come in on Zero Aura and revenge it if it's used up its Fake Out and such. And so while it lacks power, it's a definite better option against a lot of offense teams, because it outspeeds a lot of things that normally can revenge it. And it also adds an additional mix-up when you think about Pinsirite, because if somebody SDs on Mega, you don't know whether that they're trying to preserve their bulk in case of Diansite, or if they're waiting to Mega Evolve and apply their flying type of Pinsirite. So it just adds even more mix-ups and hard plays and hard turns when you think about the possibility of Pinsirite, Diansite, or even bluffing Diansite or Pinsirite and their Lucario.
Right.
It's just Like when you think of, in theory, when you think about the possibilities of what Terrakion can do to teams, it is terrifying. The only thing that keeps it from being suspected or banned at this point, I feel, is the fact that it's not quite as good as what you think in practice. It has very, like Diane said, especially obviously, has almost next to no defensive utility. And even Lucario and Terrakion just isn't a good defensive mon. You need to build that with the understanding that it's only going to be breaking and coming in on very, very few things.
Right. And I think also the fact, of course, is this, like you mentioned, susceptibility to 8 speed. I think that's really what keeps it in check, of course, and especially since Altaria Zygarde is the prime set. So I think in that regard, offensively speaking, it can be, I wouldn't say easy to check, but it's doable. But defensively speaking, it's extremely hard, and people have been going on and beyond to try to like creative ways in checking it. I've seen the rise of Autonite Hippowdon specifically. I think Pigeons was the one who kind of promoted that, and you know, it just comes to show, like, yes, would you consider it like too out of the box in order to keep this mon in check, or is it just, you know, like it's hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if you're promoting Autonite Hippo to check Terrakion, I think there's a sign that we're having a few issues here. But yeah, I've definitely seen some crazy stuff. Like people are talking about Aggronite Palisand and Aggronite Ghost in general. And that's another thing, like there just aren't a lot of good ghost types, period. If there were more, then we could run Aggronite Ghost types and check Terrakion.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that there aren't. The amount of defensive counterplay to Terrakion, again, in theory, if it clicks the right move, hits stone edges, etc., clicks SE, taunts when you're trying to recover, all of that is just an unbelievably impressive mod to try and switch into. It is truly, truly awful.
I think with Kartana, there's also sort of another threat being the same way of the fact that, particularly I found with Swordsguard's Pinsirite, the fact that it goes and abuses a lot of the standard Kartana metagame. It often forces a lot of pressure on the steals. For example, in the case of Magearna, it's already being very heavily pressured by a lot of ball breakers in the metagame. It's trying to take on like half of everything's team at once. You can't do that all at once. And I've seen sort of sets like the neck which I've seen has been in my building particularly has been rising a lot in valuability simply because of that hit check pivot that it could do to both Terrakion and Kartana, as well as a couple of things in the game. It doesn't have to check everything at once, but because of that opportunity, it makes it a hell of a lot easier to play. As well as that, Bolt Switch pivot also allows the greater usage of Terrakion and Kartana themselves, and I feel like a lot of these other pivots will start rising up from Lando's grave.
It's true, but even it's still like I like Pivot Magearna, but it's always the fact of Primal Groudon 50/50s that kind of make it like it's hard to say. But yeah, like I definitely agree. Manectite Magearna is a great answer to Kartana and kind of Terrakion, but not really. But
not Terrakion.
No. But yeah.
No, right.
For Kartana's sake, I think what kind of has the advantage over Terrakion is that it's better. Like it's hard to check it offensively compared to Terrakion because like. You know, it resists 8 speed, pixelate 8 speed and stuff like that. And I think in that regard, that's what kind of like makes it better fit on offensive teams. And and it's just also the speed, you know, like having that extra speed that makes it outpace Terrakion in that 1v1 matchup. I think also had like gives it an advantage in a sense, but I would say Terrakion does have more kind of set versatility per se, even though like options like I know it was a Chazm who started actually running knockoff on Kartana, and one might say why would you run knockoff in Mix and Mega, but it's to actually beat the likes of, like I think you said, Giratina, Ho-Ho, and even
the Lunala.
Right.
It was on a particular form of screens that I sort of needed a strong answer to very bulky teams, and well, in particular, it was just because Lunala was being a bloody pain.
Right.
Unfortunately, on that team, it does also cause some issues with Cart once you do realise that they can just hard in.
Right. But it's still, it comes to show, like, it's an option, right? Maybe not the best one, but still, like, to help it beat. And I think even the fact with Kartana, with the Beast Boost pre-Mega, and I think a lot of people undermine that, where, you know, it's not weak before Mega Evolves either, and it could still manage to nab an attack boost and then just, like, snowball from there, especially when you're talking about stones that give it a lot of speed, like Metagross Sight, and stuff like that. So I don't know. They both have their pros and cons, but I think I favor Terrakion a bit more now. I think it favors a post Lando T metagame more than Kartana a bit, because like its stabs are more spammable in my opinion. So yeah, that's that in that regard.
I also point out that Adamant Kartana A threat was particularly prevalent. It's just giving that slight bit more damage roll.
Right.
Does have a few more issues on its side thanks to the rise of models like Noivern, which thanks to Lando going now have a lot more defog, which is most likely going to be changed in months. So rise of rock type, especially stealth rockers.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. I just wanted to note a few things, just add on to what I think makes Kartana so oppressive, and I'll try to make it quick. But like you said, it not only like deals with and can switch in on the main Pixie Speeder in the most common Revenger and alternate Zygarde, it actually punishes it and really forces people in really difficult situations, because with some of the nastier offensive cores, like actually one of the premier offensive cores that I think is maybe underutilized, maybe not, but on paper this core is nasty, is Terrakion Kartana, because Terrakion forces a ton of really, really difficult problems for a lot of Kartana's checks, like Holo and such. And Kartana can come in hard and punish a lot of the Revengers for Terrakion, like Altaria and Zygarde. So they not only like offensively check the Pokemon they can deal with and revenge each other, they punish, like these Pokemon are two of the strongest offensive cleaners in the game. So if you let them get in often and give them switches to break open your team, it's just a terrible situation. So what makes Kartana so difficult is the fact that it can be revenged by Pixie Speed, the premier method of revenging, like you said, and it's faster than everything else. So it's just, I think the main thing that stems from the difficulty of dealing with Kartana is the fact that it's so strong that it doesn't even care if you resist its moves a lot of the time, and it's so fast that you can't revenge it at all.
And it's also, on the physical side, it's quite bulky, so even like using priority, even like Pinsirite 8 is like not always guaranteed as a safe measure if it's still healthy, you know, in that regard.
And I keep telling people as well, Metagross adds special defense as well, so even though that special defense stat is still pretty low, it's not like as bad as people think. Like people are thinking that like Manectite Mew Ice Beam can KO Kartana.
Oh yeah.
That's not the case at all.
You need to yeah. But Manectite Mew is kind of like something of the past at this point, yeah.
Right, yeah. I was just using it as an example.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
A lot of these mons, like Manectite Magearna, Manectite Mew, they need to run HP Fire to check Kartana, and that's really oppressive. It's like these moves already have 4 move slot syndrome as is, so when you add that necessity into their 4 moves to check Kartana, it's just so annoying and oppressive to deal with. That's my point, I guess.
Yeah. And on that regard, let's move on a bit. I want to talk about Magearna. I know it's Chazm. I don't know if it's still your favorite mon, but it's still versatile. We all know that. It has a lot of sets. But I think one set that's kind of fallen off, which is kind of sad because it was kind of my favorite, is Cameraptite. And I don't know, Chazm, you were the one who kind of was the main like abuser of that set. So like any opinions on Cameraptite Magearna in the current meta?
The issues currently surrounding Cameraptite Magearna mainly go, it doesn't really give any sort of defensive measures that a lot of them would do. Like, sure, it can emergency check a few, and well, with Fall of Lando, it now has slightly less 4 move slots in home, but the problem is it wants so much coverage at once, it just can't fit it all into one set.
Right.
It does damage stuff like Primal Groudon and most Groundon very well, but it's only with the specific move sets, and that it usually sort of forces it to choose between offensive and defensive.
Right.
And that real issue with weighing them up sort of makes Camera Up Die a more niche set in the current meta compared to other more reliable CM split users like Lattice type. Even sometimes Manic type is a better CM user.
Right. And I think, like you said, yeah, it's the kind of the 4 move slot syndrome, and one would think even like since we were such an offensive metagame, you would think that Trick Room, especially Trick Room 3 attacks, would be kind of one to abuse that, but we kind of haven't seen that. And I think especially with CM Camera Up type, it's kind of eclipsed by CM Lunala in a bit, because in a way they kind of function the same way, because Magearna has bulk, but also Lunala kind of has pseudo bulk when it comes to I forgot the ability name, the multi-scale one. So they kind of do the same thing, and I honestly always prefer Lunala, not only for its stabs, but also the potential with the Z move, just to like break down its checks as a CM user. So I don't know, and one Magearna set that I really been liking, and I still like to this day, is Pinsirite will always be my all-time favorite. Especially now that I would consider it the best boomer after Landor's T, you know, like, even though Explosion's not necessarily a necessity on it this set, but I really like it, so yeah, there's that.
I agree the Explosion on Pinsirite Magearna is a fairly decent option, particularly for the likes of if there's lots of flying resist spam, for example, for example, Magearna plus Kartana is a particular core I've tried experimenting with to either get them up to switch, because they're particularly good offense killers and they generally have attacking resist themselves, especially considering the major decline of CM Magearna in the recent meta. And of course, the slight decline of Magearna itself. The issue with Camera Up Die Magearna compared to Lunala, on the other hand, is the fact that compared to Lunala, Magearna has a lot of soft checks, and that sort of ends up coming down to stuff like Primal Groudon and other grounds in general, such as Darkest Ground, and as you also said, depending on coverage, Lunala, Entei, Victini.
Right.
In general, really can't find those slots that you need to make TR work now.
Yeah. I think you could still argue that you could definitely argue, and I think you could even build 3 attacks Trick Room, like you said. I'm not sure about Calm Mind Trick Room, but Camera Up Die Magearna and such, but I think if you have the right 3 attacks on 3 attack Trick Room, that could have a pretty cool impact in some games where the opponent, I don't know, has like a Lunala or I don't know, like not a fat Pedon, like more of a offensively oriented Pedon that takes like something ridiculous, like I don't know, like 70 blaster or something like that.
Most offensive Pedons can, in fact, I think they can die to a Focus Blast off a Stealth Rock.
Wow.
Like they're that on the special side.
So if you get your Focus Blast and such, like Pedon just isn't a good switch in anymore. So if you get like a Trick Room up and even preserve your Soul Heart, is that the name of the ability, Soul Heart?
Yeah.
The point is it gives you plus special attack. So if you preserve that and manage to get that, unmeg it, and then you can have your little Trick Room up, and you can really take advantage of those 3 turns that you have that extra speed, and you outspeed everything, I feel.
And it resists 8 speed, so you can't check it like that.
Right.
So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of value, but still.
Revenge killing Magearna. There's very little that can really revenge kill it apart from the likes. Yeah, apart from Entei, that's pretty much the only one that comes to mind.
Right.
Yeah, I think the issue with Camera Update is just the fact that I like the other Magearna sets a lot more. Like, I find myself wanting to use, especially in the day when Legenders was spammed a lot more often, I found myself wanting to use Latiasite, and I have loved Manectite, like just a really bulky Manectite Magearna with like full switch HP Fire Flare Cannon. It checks Kartana, it checks Altarionite Zygarde, it pivots on stuff that I wanted to pivot on, and lets me have my other breakers come, and it couples really well with some of the other Pokemon that I want to run right now. So I've been really loving bulky Manectite Magearna, and I think I'll continue to love that mod. So I just don't want to put a camera update on Magearna. I want to run Manectite or Latiasite or something.
Right.
I think the other options are a little bit better. Even Pinsirite is, I prefer to run Pinsirite over camera update right now.
Right. And even, we didn't even mention, but of course Sablonite I think is still, especially with Tapu Lele kind of seeing a rise, it's still like probably one of the best special defensive walls in the meta. But that, anyways, so moving on from Magearna, we'll talk about another like big mon in the current meta, of course, is Zygarde, which has been for the longest time. But you know, since our last video with Chazm, Lucarionite Zygarde was kind of like the prime set, but we've seen a shift back to Altarionite, of course, due to not only like its defensive typing just being great, like really great, but also the value of 8 priority, like in checking so many of offensive threats, especially in this offensive metagame. So we could talk about Zygarde, but people have been saying yes, it's broken and stuff, but like I don't know, I think it's just like I think the reaction is just because it's been good for so long that it must be broken, which I don't really see that as the case. I think it's just a really good mon, and yeah, it's really useful.
If you're going to make the argument that something's broken, if you're going to make the argument that something's broken because it's been good for so long, you should be wanting to ban Pete on. I think that's just a weak argument, but yeah. Go on, Kaz, I'm sorry.
Altarionite Zygarde is particularly been really strong right now. Of course, in addition to its offense, but the fact that people are now exploring a lot more options for it. I've seen a few facade sets, and I've
even seen a rock slide. Sorry, I just interject. Rock slide for Hogan. Yeah.
That was me. That was me. Don't pin that on everybody. That was me. That was an
no, but I've seen it on the ladder actually. So maybe you had some influence.
Wow.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah.
Wow. I sniped Fard and solo with it once, and that was the only time I had any kind of impact. But other than that, I put return right on that, and that's it stayed with return now.
Right.
But yeah.
Also, HP Fire Altarionite Zygarde is an unset.
Wow.
What is that?
I've never heard that. Wow.
It's a problem meme.
What does that do?
For Kartana.
It's for Kartana.
I thought you said HP flying.
Oh no.
But unfortunately, I'm also to blame for HP fire. I'm also to blame for HP Fire. I was memeing in the Eminent Discord one day and was talking with Farden about it. He was like, "Bro, Kartana is so good. The Diesel turn and Zygarde." And I was like, "Well, not Jolly DD HP Fire. You want speed after the DD and you OHKO with HP Fire." And he was like, "Bro, that's the move. That's the new set. I'm running that." And now it's like the only alternate Zygarde set that he wants to use. And he's always preaching about how it's the best set. Oh dear.
Oh wow.
What have I done? What have I done?
But I really like Facade though. Facade is like probably the best option for me. I run it over a return actually for the most part. Just because Zygarde tends to get status a lot. I don't know if it's just me, but my Zygardes always get the 10th status. So just being able to abuse Facade is really nice, especially with Ho-Ho rising a bit.
Yeah, I think Facade Zygarde could be really, really good right now because RCSs are also going to be coming back.
Right.
Have already been back a bit. And in order to check the Zygarde properly, RCS needs to run Will-O-Wisp. So if you get Willowed by an RCS and you're already at +1, and you like DD again or just attack it, you're just going to blow through teams with Facade. Even checks that are incredibly bulky, steel types and such, like I don't know, Aggronite Mew, from +1 Facade or +2 even, it's going to be, this checks are going to be, that's going to take so much damage, I guess is the point I'm trying to make here.
Right.
Nothing is really safe from +1 Facade such that the thing puts on insane damage after status. So I agree, I think Facade, alternate Zygarde is a really good 4th option moving forward.
I'd also like to note that even with Altarionite and Altarionite, particularly sub outrage sets being very good, I recently went back and looked at some potentially other interesting sets in Pinsirite, and surprisingly the very unused Banitite.
Oh god.
That's something else, yeah.
I played that thing twice and that was terrible.
Spam. Spam.
No.
Yes, I know. Yeah, Chazm and I played a few times on the suspect ladder, and I had to dodge getting fully paired.
That sucks, yeah. Glare is a balance move.
It was terrible.
But I really like Lucario though. I think even though people say, oh, it just gets revenge killed by Altaria Knight Zygarde, I still, just this 1,000 arrow spam is too good in my opinion, and it actually has really good bulk. It doesn't have the defensive typing as Altaria Knight, but just again, I'm using 1,000 arrows as your only, like, I think there's more coverage flexibility, right? So I've used Substitute, Glare, even Paint Split, even though those Paint Split Zygarde sets are kind of dying out a bit because Blissey's kind of like non-existent, but still, I think Lucario Knight's quite good.
I agree. Yeah, I think Lucario Knight Zygarde, I hate the fact that it's back because I always struggle to check it, and I feel like I'll still struggle to check it even now.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of the mons that were the best answers for it, like Sableye Buzzwole was used a lot back in the day, and I don't know. It's hard to find like really great ground resist. A lot of the Zygarde checks don't really resist ground for the most part. Like Manectate Magearna. Imagine trying to check a Lucario Knight Zygarde with Manectate.
You can't.
You're
No.
going to blow up.
Yeah.
You can't. You're going to die. You're
Yeah.
going to die, and it's going to be bad. And I think the fact that that thing's back is going to make it really difficult. And people are saying the Zygarde is broken and all that. If Lucario Knight Zygarde makes it like unbelievably difficult to check Zygarde and make some really terrible mix-ups that end up costing people some games and such in major tours, I'm excited for this up-and-coming seasonal and all that.
Right.
If there's like some big-time games where Lucario Knight Zygarde and Lures and such really mess people up, I think that the possibility of the Zygarde suspect could. I'm not saying it's going to happen or anything, but it is a possibility that's kind of lingering in the corner of my mind with Lucario Knight likely coming back in this year.
Yeah.
Now, some of the things I've seen with Lucario Knight being very difficult to check, for example, is the fact that a lot of the time I actually have to rely on Lucario Knight Zygarde to check it. Because
Exactly.
just not a dedicated check, apart from like a Whisper, which is very well be bought by Lucario Knight Facade Zygarde, is very worrying to me. The fact that Zygarde could just cheese through pretty much all of its counters depending on the stone that you're running is just a pretty terrifying aspect to see, and that's sort of what makes me think Zygarde is at the moment really the only two more preserving the best run.
Right. And I think, Lando leaving, wasn't the best check, I'm saying, but offensively speaking, I think, it helped a bit with the Zygarde aspect, since, pre-Mega with the Intimidate, and then the threat of Boom, so Zygarde can't really just, like, get greedy and start sitting up on Landorus, per se. I don't know. We'll see. I mean... Yeah.
There's also alternative Lando, like that wasn't used near as often. I don't think it was the better set. I think the consistency of Salamence Rock's Explosion was like really what pushed Lando over the edge and made people frustrated and wanted a suspect and such. The consistency of that set, but alternate Lando checks pretty much any Zygarde set. Like all the sets that we just listed off, like Pinsirite, Bayonetite, Lucario Knight.
Not Aggro Knight though.
Okay, we're not talking about Aggro Knight, and I feel like. I don't want to run that scenario through my head, but I feel like after just being at neutral after like a coil or such, Lando could probably SD be faster than the Aggro Knight Zygarde, just like past EQ or something. I don't know all those roles in that scenarios, but Aggro Knight Zygarde is not a set. We don't talk about that.
I did try to use Banitite Zygarde and just coil up twice in case I went out.
That's disgusting. Oh my god. Wait, you run Tieros, Glare, Coil, and...
Tanked and exploded.
Okay. Yeah, that's nasty.
I'm not a fan.
Anyways, okay, so we discussed, like, those are, like, probably the big winners so far. Even losers kind of discussed. Now I wanted to bring on, like, underrated stuff that we feel that's not being use as much as it should, you know. And I want to start off by saying, of course, I love Ho-Ho, especially now. I even used it back in the Landorus team metagame, but especially now since we kind of lost like a flying wall breaker per se. Banned Ho-Ho is really good, Life Orb. Even Scarf, I've seen people use that. I'm not a huge fan, it's kind of weak. But just because there's that potential lure option for some offensive threats, even though it does not speed Pinsirite Terrakion, which sucks. But you know, like, I really like Ho-Ho. Its stabs are great. The threat of burn, but like we said, this Facade is Zygarde, but still, it's gonna weaken the 1,000 arrows, which, you know, Facade. I don't even think +1 Facade from Zygarde to it kills a bulky Ho-Ho, like the Life Orb bulky set. So. If you don't have an Arceus Rock, basically, you're kind of fucked. That's all I'm saying. Or Venusaurite, Mandibuzz.
Here's something that you probably wouldn't expect me to say. I personally think that the Weavile's quite an underrated threat at the moment, mainly due to...
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. Somebody finally sees that.
Because a lot of people said, oh my god, Magearna shits on Weavile, but no, I like it too, yeah.
Well, speaking of Magearna, I do think that like when I say Magearna does still take it just still takes a giant dump all over Weavile, unfortunately.
Right.
I do agree.
But you know, because yeah, go ahead.
Weavile does 3 KO Magearna off the rocks, and I feel like that's a pretty important detail to have, the fact that it actually can exert some pressure on them.
Right.
What's Magearna?
Sort of like cancel that out, but the fact is, Weavile, in particular on some 8 spam teams, has been excellent speed control, and like Zeraora, has been great at killing offense. And I personally feel like going to be a mon you might use for the future if Zygarde gets a bit
exactly annoying. And especially since we discussed Lucario, Zygarde, and even stuff like Noivern Rising, I think really with Weavile there is that potential with the party. And one set I discussed with Chazm a bit, Lucario Weavile with pursuit support, I think is pretty good too, you know. Just a threat that it could kind of deal some pressure to offensive threats trying to switch out, fearing the priority. I really like it a lot. And yeah, Weavile is cool. I like it.
Pardon me if I'm wrong, but I think I was looking, like, I love Weavile. Everybody knows this is like the main meme surrounding me is that Weavile is terrible and Andy thinks it's good. But I think I calculated right that Lucario and Weavile, one of the cool things about it is that offensive Lunala, like just 252 speed, 252 special attack Lunala, adaptability pursuit, Oko's through, I know this is true, it Oko's through Shadow Shields, Lunala tries to switch out on the Weavile.
Oh wow.
So it doesn't care. So yeah, with Glalia, it's kind of a weird 50-50 because if you fake out the Lunala and break the scale and it's trying to stay in predicting the pursuit and trying to KO with like Moonblast or such, you can break it and you KO with pursuit. But with Lucario Knight, it doesn't care. If you still have your Shadow Shield up, you can Mega Evolve right off the bat and just KO it through Shadow Shield, even if it has it in fact. So that's pretty cool. I like that about Lucario Knight Weavile as well.
So yeah, is there anything else that you guys consider like underrated per se?
Pinsirite in particular.
Pinsirite,
yeah.
Yes.
Sort of like been rising a bit, mainly for a few of its particular ground immunities. It basically uses Arceus Ground as set up for it, and it's a particularly great lure for all of those people who are expecting Ultari Niente and just instead get their beat on damage for 40 and they realise they can't retaliate.
Right. And also due to the fact that rocks are easier to get off since, you know, Lando's not here, so there's that too.
That's nice. I've seen people lose important games because they predicted Altari and Entei and it Mega Evolved into a Pinsirite Entei and it just blew through the team. So that's something I do as well.
Right.
And something that's really cool about that mono as well is Kartana right now runs Leaf Blade, Smart Strike, Sacred Sword, SD. So when you think about a Fire Flying type, Entei alongside Ho, that's another reason why Ho is cool right now, is because those two are both Fire Flying types, which actually resist all three of Kartana's coverage options.
Yeah.
So Kartana is kind of one of the main mods people prep for. It's just a fact. This one is so good right now, especially Landorus being gone, all that. That's like the main other threat people are looking at. So having a great offensive mon that can provide some speed control and also check all of Kartana's moves is just pretty nice right now. I like Pinsirite Entei a lot. I think another one that's pretty cool is Pinsirite Cobalion. I was talking, Pigeons ran a team that I made for OM World Cup a lot in his M&M Open run, and he did pretty well with it. I think he won pretty much every game that he played. They might have lost, I'm not sure, but he really loved that team. And I guess Stresh and I were talking, and we just felt that Pinsirite Cobalion is a neat Pokemon. The fact that it's a steel flying type that can taunt. It has access to SD, which helps to fix some of that of the initial power issue that it has. It's really weak initially, but setting up some SD usually helps to fix that.
And it also has
issue.
quick attack too, right?
It does have quick attack, but normally the secondary option that I really like to run, and I think is pretty much you should always be running if you're running Taunt SD Stone Edge, because that's another cool thing that has over like something like Pinsirite Magearna and such, is the fact that it has access to a really good secondary coverage option that it can use when you boost up with the SD or such, or something like Zapdos comes in on rocks, there's chips. You can KO with Stone Edge, and then that isn't really a good. A lot of the primary flying resists can fall to Stone Edge and such, and the ones that don't fall to Stone Edge are usually like Cobalion with Pinsirite is pretty fat as well, so it's kind of difficult to revenge it and such. But yeah, obviously, if Manectite Magearna rises dramatically, that would be really difficult for it, because Manectite Magearna is just a great flying resist. It also resists Stone Edge and such, and even like Aggronite with Lilith could cause it issues, but I don't know. This one's can be worked around with, and I think that if bulky offensive balance comes back into play, that Cobalion with like Taunt SD, an interesting Pokemon. I don't know. I have my own. I really like it. Let's see.
Victini, Red Orb, Mew are sort of mons that I could probably sort of cut together here that I feel are particularly underrated at the moment, particularly because of their extremely powerful wallbreaking capabilities under sort of the same play that XRP that Nick's STP Gong can do it. Their main niche is over them, and the fact that Victini can, of course, straight up greater immediate power, whilst Mew particularly has the control of the special side, and particularly is quite an annoyance for the stalls that I found, seeing as most fire resists don't actually like taking psychic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's that too, and I think they fell off a lot because, speaking of Mew more, right, because there was that whole surge of Primal Kyogre, and it's still good, but I don't see it as often as I used to see it, especially in the summer, so, but yeah, like, Victini, of course, I've always loved that mon. There's, like, rarely good switches to it for any offense or balance build, so, yeah, like, I definitely see those. It's just the fact that there's the whole thing with, you're not going to be able to use Primal Groudon and stuff like that. It's, I consider Primal Groudon the best rocker in the current meta, and I think you guys would agree, right?
Yes,
so,
I definitely agree.
So there's that. So, but there's still potential. I mean, you could always, Terrakion is right up there too as a great stealth rock user. So, you could run those mons as your red orb users and stuff, and it's cool.
Yeah. I do think not having a Pedon is actually a significant downside of running Victini, like you're saying, or Red Orb Mew as well. I think Pedon's going to be ridiculous in this meta after Landorus is gone. That one check being gone, even though people talk about how you can't switch in your Lando on Overheat from defensive Pedon, that's true, but the fact of the matter is a lot of people were running defensive Pedon with Overheat because of Lando, because the physical stats, like, I don't know, Stone Edge, Fire Punch with rocks or such, or SD, smacked on a few blades, even though I'm not sure that's that great even with Landorus gone. People were running physical Pedon sets because of the fact that Lando could come in on those, and you didn't want that to happen. So the fact that you don't have to worry about that now kind of frees up a little bit more Pedon versatility. It's pretty scary to think about.
Right.
But yeah, I think Victini is a really, really good mon. I love that thing. I think more people should be using that because, again, I'm going to mention the fact that what are Kartana's coverage options? they're all resisted by Psychic Fire, and so that makes Victini an excellent offensive Kartana check. And the ones that want to switch it on V-Create can't really switch it on V-Create. Like Zyger, when it's trying to come out on V-Create, it takes 50, even if it's fairly bulky. Pedon, if it's like super defensive, it takes like 30, but that thing, if it doesn't have a lot of defensiveness, it can easily take 50%, and if it's an offensive variant, it's going to take even more. And if you're willing to take the risk of Blue Flare missing and click like Blue Flare plus V-Create on Zyger or such, you can just kill them a lot of the time as well. So if this mon gets in often, it's going to tear apart opposing teams. It's crazy how much power this thing actually packs, even without any boosts or such.
Mm-hmm. And okay, I guess for the last note before this video gets too long, is the factor of Web's teams. Now, Web, a lot of people complain like, oh, Mix and Mega is just who wins the Web speed ties and all that, you know, especially when Landers was here. You know, I couldn't disagree. You know, Web's was probably like one of my favorite styles and one of the most, like the best styles. So with Landers T gone, do we still need to fear Webs as much as we have seen, especially in the past couple of tournaments, how much it's been spammed? Chazm left.
No, Rip Canada. Hopefully he'll be back. But I love webs. I learned M&M through webs, and it's still my favorite style. I love building those webs. I always said that I hate building and I'm bad at building, but webs is the only style that truly comes to me easily. So I still think we need to fear webs for sure. Webs are always going to be around in the foreseeable future, and Landers being gone actually carries a double-edged sword in a way for people webs to be nerfed and such, because it's true that Landers was used on webs a lot and was even a pretty good webs check with some people running defog Solomon side Lander late in the game too, and that's a big nightmare. Like as somebody who utilized webs a lot, I can say that like the presence of defog Solomon side Lander is a big threat, because that thing's outspeeding a lot of your team as is, forces switch outs with like Pedon and such, and if it gets a free defog, then obviously there goes all your hard work and a lot of the time in the game. Mm-hmm. And also it threatens your mons. It can revenge you with explosion. It's obviously flying type, so it's not affected by webs. It has pretty good speed too with that 353 speed, and it's just it's really difficult for webs to deal with. It's a really, really good countermeasure to webs if you just slap a defog on the fourth move of your Landers. But with that said, with Landers gone, that kind of helps webs in the sense that Pedon is, I think, one of the most splashable and most must-use mons on webs, because it's the best and one of the only offensive checks to Entei. It packs fantastic resist, and full health eruption from Pedon.
It destroys everything. Yeah.
It destroys everything.
If you don't have a Venusaurite Mandibus, forget it. Like even then, you know, Smackdown and all that stuff.
Or a blue Orbmon or something, but those guys are just so scarce and like hard to build with, and they lose to all the other Pedons, so it's really hard to justify. Well, they don't lose, but like they get rocked down by all the other Pedons, so it's really hard to justify using them and such. Like blue or puzzle really beats Repton, but it gets rocked on, so it's annoying to run that as your primary Pedon check, so it's really keep off the rocks if possible. And Repton is so initially powerful. You don't need setup on it or anything to really start tearing apart opposing teams. It gets in and it causes damage and gets kills. It's ridiculous. So with the lack of Solomon side Landers, which could come in unaffected by webs and revenge it, because it doesn't pack any bulk. It's all offensively focused. So Earthquake does a ton, can straight up KO it after a little Sheparoo from full. I'm not sure about the rules on that, but one of the best revengers for it on. That thing is a lot more abusable on webs, and I think I don't know. I haven't built any webs teams after the Lando ban and all that, but I'm excited to see what it looks like. And I don't know. I ran a webs that the primary web archetype that was spanned throughout tournaments and such was G-Rat webs. G-Rat built it with the help
basically, yeah, explosion spam webs, basically.
It was just the culmination of that. I had built a core of like Solomon side Landers with Pinsirite Magearna on the webs earlier on, and then G-Rat had found a way to incorporate Moonblast Coal Mines Lunala, which exerted pressure on Mandibus. I hadn't thought of running Moonblast on Lunala instead of like, I don't know, Focus Blast or Psyshock earlier on, so that was a really good addition. And then he also had Alternate Zyger. I had previously said that Alternate Zyger was awful on webs because I felt like it had been defogged on by a lot of the common defog is because bulky RCSs with defog were ran a lot more often back then, and that was like, if your Zygarde was forced to come in, that was just an invitation for them to bring in their RCs and defog all your hazards away and all your early game hard work.
Right.
So I felt like that was a terrible mon to have on your webs, but those mons started disappearing with the offensive meta shift and all that. So Alternate Zygarde was actually a fantastic addition to webs that it gave you an extra speed control option, helped deal with Noivern and some of the mons that really pestered webs and could revenge their aura after a little chip. If you get rocks up and Zero Aura has to come in a lot often and it gets chipped a little bit down to half, then you can just revenge it with your Zygarde with E-Speed later on and stuff. And it's just it was a really nice addition and a really nice thought. So that was kind of the team that was spammed and tried and true. I used it in World Cup finals. It absolutely obliterated my opponent's team. It was probably the easiest match I've ever had.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, it was pretty a pretty
Rough
convincing
Done.
win. Yeah.
I just remember I looked at the matchup, looked at when Lunala and my Reptile, and looked at his team, and I was like, oh my goodness, like I don't need to think for this game.
And that's why that's why a lot of people complain, because people found it like a formulaic style. Like you just start with Shuckle. And then get your rocks up as fast as possible, and then proceed, click the buttons and win. And the whole notion that yes, probably Landorus was a better stealth rock setter for that type of team due to the fact of explosion blocking defog and stuff, but Primal could still fill the role. Yes, it's because I think on that Jera team specifically, it was like Eruption, P-Blades, Smackdown, and Swords Dance. So it could forego Swords Dance and run Stealth Rock and still hit hard. Like Swords Dance was just kind of like the cherry on the top in terms of like breaking power, but Primal Groudon's not weak by any means. So I think the playstyle is gonna be fine without Landorus and the threat of Boom. And I've actually been exploring with other Explosion users. I like Metagross. I find it pretty cool. It does the same thing but worse, like Landorus, because of the speed. It's less. And even tried with Cloyster. It's not the best mon. It's like really niche, but just with Shell Smash and then Gladelet type. And then the threat of I like that at Cloyster too, because it could run Rapid Spin. I just typically run Frustration, Rapid Spin, and then Boom. So just in case you're versus a Web's Mirror matchup, you could kind of like circumvent your way through that. And I think there's still a lot of options that need to be explored with Webs, I think.
Yeah, I think it's one of the exciting things. Whenever I have a ban, it's one of the exciting things I'm always excited about. It's like the possibilities for Webs going forward. It's no secret that Stretch and I are both like our favorite playstyle or baby is Webs. So.
Right.
Because if you hate Webs, I'm sorry, but I think one of the reasons why Webs is not going to die in the foreseeable future, I guess I'm not the person to talk to about that, because I don't know, I'm one of the people that wants it to stay around and is going to continue to try and build and innovate it and make it relevant. And I think Stretch was the same thing, so I don't know.
And then I guess, just one last thing, and I know it's a controversial topic, but I wanted to bring it up. If Explosion were to be banned in a hypothetical sense, and I'm not saying that I'm for it or against it, but in a hypothetical sense, if Explosion were to be gone, would that help diminish Web's viability? Would you agree to that?
I would agree to that. It would, for sure, because I remember the Webs that I used really was the Z Solgaleo Webs that Joe had made, and the idea was that first of all, you won the Webs mirror match almost immediately because people didn't run Landorus or flying types as often back then. Right. Solgaleo's Clear Body could come in and you would just Z Splash, get +3.
Right, yeah, that's
it. Just smash through teams. It's terrible now. Like don't get me wrong, it's a terrible one to run now. But with that said, then Stretch came along. This was like early on, before I met Stretch and all that. But Stretch came along and it made a boom spam. Just in general, boom spam team was really weird. It had like Bayonetta, Silvally with Tailwind and Explosion.
Oh,
and
wow.
a whole bunch of other Explosion users like Altaria, Mew.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, that's
it was a super weird team, but it was wacky, and Stretch did really well with it. And then Stretch discovered Webs and found that he didn't need to run Tailwind anymore with a combination with Explosion. He could just run Webs, use that as his speed control, and just spam Explosion with that. So Stretch was the first person who kind of like innovated and understood that explosion was a really abusable thing on webs. And then, he basically told me that like that's the style that you should be going with. Instead of, I had kind of more of a setup spam, like Soul Blade, thing. I don't know, Jazz Sect and stuff. It utilized a few mons that had explosion, like one or two, but it wasn't like focused around the idea of blocking defog with explosion. I was more fixated on the idea of just blowing through all the hazard removals with my setup and taunting them.
Right.
All on Darkrai or such. So yes, for sure. Like explosion is I think it's best utilized on webs, honestly. I think explosion shines on offense, and especially in HO. I think that's where people think and fear explosion because of the fact that it's powerful, it blocks removal, and it kind of serves as like a
momentum.
Pivot of sorts.
Yeah, a momentum. Yeah.
Right. And because you can reset a lot of scenarios where, like, if my Lando is out versus your Kartana and you SD in my face and I explode on you, then there goes your Kartana. There's a threat. Like I say, I want to reset the scenario. I can choose if I wanted to, if I want this matchup or if I don't. And so, and so it's just kind of, I would definitely, like, in short, TLDR, yes, for sure. Explosion being banned would limit webs big time, but I don't think it would entirely eliminate it. It would hurt the style, but I think you could still argue that like taunt spam webs or setup spam webs could run more of a long ball turn webs where you can maybe take your webs up multiple times if you get them defoced away or center them around that. I don't think the style would be entirely gone, but you have to see.
Right. But anyways, that's neither here or there. At least we got rid of the best like explosion user, and I think the metagame is a bit more versatile in the sense where Lando T's gone. I think while offense might still be the best style, I think there's a little bit more room for bulky offense, and to resurge again and just more bulk. And yeah, I think it's good. So we'll just see from there. We have the seasonal coming up, and OMPL is going to happen near the summertime. So we'll see how things go. But for so far, I think it's quite in a balanced state. Yes, there's some few mons like we said, Kartana, Terrakion, and such. But so far, I think it's going in the better direction up until Gen 8 for sure.
Yeah, let's hope so. I think it'll be fun too. I think Landorus was really, really annoying to check, like individually, like a lot of the things that you wanted to check it, like Gladius, like Magearna, got rocked on, and a lot of the things that could block its rocks, like Sableye Zapdos or even Mandibuzz in some scenarios, they could get exploded on if they didn't Mega Evolve yet, or Landorus really pressured them and forced them to roost and then pivot into like Terrakion, and then that thing would start getting kills, and so people were really, myself included, I hated finding Lando checks because of the fact that yes, explosion is annoying. I understand that people hate explosion, and definitely don't agree with all the arguments coming from there. And I think one thing that I was trying to let people know, and that I still want to let people know, is if you think explosion is broken, Landorus is a very unique mon that utilizes this. Like, there's no other Pokemon in Mega that has the combination of flying and ground coverage. That's ridiculous coverage to possess, and it's incredibly hard to find resist for this. So, a lot of Pokemon that can check like Pinsirite Magearna or even like Metagross and such, like just mono flying resist, get blown up by Lando with Roxas, the next type of Magearna.
Yeah.
I'm sure I could think of some, but basically like mono flying resist, like rock types, steel types, etc. They can really take on Pinsirite Magearna and Metagross, since its Earthquake isn't stab. Lando blows those up because it has that fantastic secondary coverage for flying resist. So the typings that resisted that combo were so constrained, so difficult to find and build around. It was a really unique mon to prepare for, almost to the level of like Lunala, where there's only a few mons that handle it well, and people understand and start to catch on to those mons after a while and build checks and like things that punish those mons in combination with Landorus or in combination with Lunala, if we're talking about that. So that's what really made it pesky for me, is because we knew there was going to be one set for the most part in some, let's say, rock or explosion. and it just didn't matter half the time. It's still going to do what it does, and it's incredibly annoying and hard to prep for it.
Exactly. Yeah, couldn't agree more. So yeah, that's it. We'll see though. I would rather like we wait and see in terms of another suspect. I think for now we'll just let the metagame stabilize a bit, because Lando was kind of a big ban. It only recently caught on popularity, but it was still like an important like a big factor in the metagame. So I think things will shift a bit, but for the most part it's fine right now. So there's that.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I think a seasonal right now is like a really great time to test the waters, and it came at a really good time to see what this is going to look like and such.
People are saying bring forth the stall, which I can't agree with, because it's still, yes, there's a bit more breathing room, but still like there's a lot of stuff that stops stall. Cough cough Terrakion, but for the most part, yeah.
Yes. I don't think stall's going to rise much at all.
No.
I was telling Farden he needs to try and make it work. He's like, I got you, but we'll see. We shall see.
Anyways, okay, this video's been long enough. Chazm apparently died. Probably was too late in the time zone difference. But anyways, thank you for coming onto my channel finally. Hopefully we could have another discussion after maybe another suspect that happens. Who knows? But yeah, thanks again for joining.
Absolutely.